Hi, Harsh.
I said, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How have you been?
Oh, great. Great to be on your show and nice to connect and looking forward to discussing about tennis.
Sure, thank you so much for being here. And why don't you tell us how things are in the US right now?
Things are good. I'm in Minnesota. I live in the Twin Cities, we call it Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Hmm.
And of course, this year has been a challenging year out here as everywhere else across the world with the pandemic. But fortunately, through the summer, we've been able to offer tennis lessons and programs, and it's been a wonderful time for the juniors and really people of all ages to be outside and participating in sport. So things have been fortunately going well through the summer, and now we're going into the colder season.
Sure.
But from a sport and tennis perspective, we've been fortunate to be able to play outside and support our players and families with the benefits of the sport.
Wonderful. So, how was the reaction? I mean, when things opened up, I don't know the different parts of US. Like, I'm sure a lot of parts were, quite open even from the start. So, how has the response been? Parents sending their kids, or have they taken a more careful approach to it?
Yeah, from what I've seen, we've followed all the precautions, and I think being outside, a lot of families and kids have been looking to, for that outdoor recreation and playing the sport.
Sure.
So gradually, as we got into June and July, more people started to get back, and here people were being encouraged to stay active and be outside and continue to keep stay healthy, and in terms of keeping your immunity strong and staying healthy, sport is a wonderful thing. And tennis is a sport that you can do, socially distant. So I think most people recognize that and were very open to adopting it, and it's worked out really well. And like I said, our programs had a successful summer, and into the fall we have lots of participation, and we're able to support our players at an important time. When health and wellness is such an important thing.
Sure, that's great. And the thing, what happened in India is basically things opened up a bit, in June, July, and the monsoon season started. So the athletes,
Right.
they were out for like 6 months. Apart from their indoor training and or whatever, they hardly played for the last 6 7 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I think here from very early, even back in March and April, I think there was a lot of messaging around, continuing to be active and stay outside and go for walks. And that was very much, at least here in Minnesota and in general, I think even across the US, people were going out and being outside and staying physically active. So I think that was always there, recognized that that's an important part of people's lives, and the risk is quite low. And so I think in that regard, that was we're fortunate to have that kind of an approach.
Right.
um, and so people were more open to being outside and continuing to have a little bit of that normalcy, whatever best they could.
Sure.
And I'm aware that maybe things in India were different. I have a mother there in India who's and I have a lot of family there, so I speak to them
Hmm.
every day. So I was aware that some of those the strictness and the tightness of things was a little bit more heavy there.
Right. Right. Sure, but yeah, hopefully things will get back to normal soon, and we can get back to the sport in the normal way with crowds and everything.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the hope. And
Mm.
I think everybody is hoping for, the next few months to continue to improve. And hopefully next year we'll be back to enjoying sport, playing sport, and like you said, going to big events and being able to watch and enjoy the things that we love.
Right. So, Harsh, talk to us about your journey. I mean, I remember when I started my tennis career, you were at the top. I mean, we used to hear your name a lot. So, talk to us about your journey. How do you get started?
Yeah, no, it's I grew up in Mumbai, in India, and was very fortunate that I come from a sport family. My mother was in Nirupama Mankad. She was India's number 1 tennis player
Oh,
for a long time, Asian champions. So my uncle Mayur Vasant was a coach. My grandfather George Vasant was an Indian Davis Cup player. So I was surrounded by international level athletes who were then into coaching. So I was very fortunate to learn the game, learn the fundamentals well, and have the opportunities to play and really develop my talent. My father was a test cricketer for India, and also grandfather coming from cricket. But my father was also big influence for me, always very supportive. I think that's one of the things I was very fortunate to have parents who had gone through the journey of sport and had played at a high level and understood that uh, you know uh, they were very supportive, never putting more pressure on me and helping me as I became more serious into the sport. And as I got into the under 12s and under 14s and junior tennis in India, uh, they were very supportive, never put extra pressure, and helped me through that competitive experience. So that was great. I also had role models right ahead of in my family, and so I think I gained inspiration from that. My brother Mihir was playing national tennis as well. Ended up going to one of the top universities in the U.S. Played tennis for the team. So I was very fortunate to have good role models, and I think subconsciously that inspired me and instilled a level of belief, that yes, I could also be a top player if I put my best effort, and the sky is the limit. So
sure.
it's interesting to think back, but the environment you grow up with, whom you're surrounded by, and the opportunities you have goes a long way in inspiring you. And I developed a strong passion for sport. When I was very young, I was playing multiple sports, but then as I started getting into the teenage years, tennis was something I took up, and I was playing nationally, got some international exposure. And so I started to really believe that this could be a career for me. So that was my early days in India. And I think I was very fortunate to get good coaching. There was some solid programs. The tennis, the courts were right next to my school. So that was, in a city like Bombay, where you spend so much time traveling and it's a very busy, intense place, that I was fortunate to have the tennis courts just right opposite my school. So as soon as I finished school, I could walk across and I was on the courts. And I remember playing 2-3 hours every day after school,
Sure.
and it was just so convenient. And then so I think I got great instruction. I had a lot of opportunity to play, and the circuit in India too was well organized at the time. I was traveling, started to play more in Maharashtra first, in the state,
Mm-hmm.
but then traveling across the country, playing different tournaments, starting to get exposed to the world, playing on different surfaces. I think that was great in India. Bombay was more hard courts.
Right.
On the western side of the country is more hard courts, but as you go to the south, we played a lot on clay.
Right. Right. Right.
In the northern part, in the eastern part, more grass courts. So I learned how to play on different surfaces,
Mm-hmm.
and we played a lot of singles and doubles. We always played doubles. So I also learned a lot of the skills, playing at the net, the strategy of the game. So all these things were great about growing up in India, and I think it gave a very strong foundation through my junior years, and I'm very fortunate, grateful for that. And we can talk more about sort of the transition from junior tennis, to professional tennis. But I think in terms of that junior experience,
Right.
it was wonderful. And I must say, the peer group that I played with,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think back to all the players that I played throughout the years, under 12, under 14. I represented India. We traveled abroad to play in tournaments, and I think back about all the players that I played against, and the level of competition, the talent, the motivation, all of those characteristics are very high. The quality of talent was exceptional, and so that also is something that we all benefited from growing up there.
Sure. And yeah, what I liked about what you mentioned was your family support, because what we notice growing, I mean, I myself, um, we have that thing about a backup, right, with education.
Right.
So we always have that at the back of our heads, where we know that if we don't make it, and in India, it's going to be really, really tough. And regardless how much your parents support you, the whole family, I mean, just the close circle, the parents, it's fine. But then the moment your uncle or your aunt or your grandparents start asking about your results, in tennis, if you're at the top, it's great. But if you're going up the ranks, if you're in the hundreds, let's say, and they start asking about your results, and then you start getting that into your head, and there it becomes such a huge mess. So
Yeah.
that is great.
Yeah, and I think part of my parents being athletes and having gone through that journey and achieving a lot of success, I think what that does to you, and what I benefited from as a child, was they trusted the process.
Sure.
They knew that if I stayed with it and I kept working, and the passion and interest and work ethic that I was showing, that would result in me getting to the higher level. So whether I won or lost, there wasn't a lot of short-term focus on the results. The results were not looked at as something to validate
Hmm.
whether I should continue. There was a level of deep trust,
Right.
um, and I feel the same way now too. As through my journey now, I've transitioned into coaching, and I work with a lot of players, and I'm a parent myself, and two young kids, and as I think of the opportunities that they have,
Sure.
I think being too focused on the results can create a lot of pressure, and in the long term, I myself trust the process a lot, and things will happen, and I think there's something to be said about supporting children in their interests, and letting that journey unfold. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, like anything, and that's the beauty of it, right? You just got to let it unfold, and support and provide the opportunity, and I think that's what my parents did for me.
Sure. So I want to go a little deeper into that. When you mentioned you could focus on the process and not the results. I don't know about your background. Would you say it would be because you had a comparatively better financial, you know, status? I mean, your family had a comparatively better financial status as compared to others, and you knew that yes, even if you don't make it to the top, you have something to fall back on.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I think back to my conversations with my parents, or interactions with them, and thinking of even when I was, 8, 9 years, maybe even older, 11, 12, 13. We weren't talking at that level of, it becoming a career or not. It was still a time for me to grow and learn, and you don't want to get ahead of yourself, and we didn't get ahead of ourselves trying to really define what my career was going to be, and kind of think through rationally whether I would make it or not, and what I would do. And again, I think there was a trust in understanding that sport was a big part of my life.
Hmm.
This was I was showing that. It wasn't that my parents were making me do it. I had a love for tennis. I had a desire, um, to become a better player.
Sure.
And it was left at that level. I was going to school, I was doing all the things that other kids were doing.
Hmm.
But of course, we understood that with the time commitment that I was putting into tennis, maybe I, you know, wouldn't be excelling in school, and that was okay. But it wasn't allowed ever to be an excuse that, oh, you're a tennis player, therefore you're going to miss the exam,
Right.
or you're not going to go. That was never. In fact, my mom used to tell a story where, in her playing days, she won the national title, and she was in college, and her father, she was asking her father if she could miss the exams because she was training a lot. And that was not allowed to be a reason to miss the exam. She still had to appear, and
Right.
in fact she had to stop playing for a few weeks to really prepare.
Right.
So that was the approach that we took. And the expectation was always that I would do my schoolwork and continue along. But at the same time, I think tennis was always supported, and that's something that I wanted. And I think when a child is showing that level of interest, it's great, when that is supported and again allowed to kind of grow, and not get too far ahead of ourselves trying to think about all the repercussions. And because frankly we don't know. And you know and also it's probably too early to be thinking about those things.
Sure. Sure. And talking about education, I know hundreds of athletes who, you know, even without putting in the same effort in their studies, they end up doing equally good, or if not way better than a lot of students who just focus on their studies. Obviously because of their, let's say, focus, concentration, they have that sharpness in their brains.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think tennis, involves so many, areas from a mental side, watching the ball, you mentioned the concentration, the focus, the thinking, right? You have to be sharp. You got to understand how you're going to play the game, how you're going to use your strengths, what are the weaknesses of the opponent. There's so much decision making going on, along with the fitness, the endurance, the physical side of it. So I always felt that, and myself, that academics was highly complementary to tennis, to sport, and sport to academics too.
Right.
I think back at my college days in America, and there I felt that when I was training, I was very focused on the training, and then the school and going to class, and all the things around the school culture was a wonderful sort of change, so it keeps your mind fresh. And both things complemented each other. And in fact, a lot of tennis players in my peer group, those that I grew up with, and my brother was a generation ahead, but they were excellent students. Many of them got into top universities and have built careers in so many fields and are excelling. And
Sure.
I think that they would attribute, or at least I attribute, a lot of that sharpness you talked about being developed and strengthened through the experience and the time you put into sport. This
Right.
is important for parents that don't come from athletic or sport backgrounds. Sometimes they feel there is a clash
Right.
between academics and sport, and that one is sort of taking time away from the other, or in some way time into tennis is going to result in maybe an adverse impact in academics. In fact, it's the other way around. And when you think about skills like time management also,
Mhm.
being an athlete means you have to be very disciplined, and develop the ability to manage your time. You don't have a minute to waste, because as I finished practice at 6 p.m. in Bombay, and then I had to drive back, it used to take an hour and a half to get home. So I'd
Sure.
be home at 7:30 p.m. Now I have to have dinner, I have to do homework, and there's only a little bit of time. So you have to manage your time really well, and you understand very early that time is precious, and you don't have time to just sit around and waste.
Sure.
And it also kept me away from other distractions. So there's so many positives from being involved in sport, and I think that a lot of people are understanding that, and there's a lot of encouragement now. towards encouraging sport. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, the trends have, in fact, really changed in India, I could say. And why I'm saying this is because my parents were really supportive when it came to tennis. Even with that amount of support, I still had to take a 3 month gap for my 10th board exams, and then I had to take like a 3 to 4 month gap for my 12th exams. And right now what we're seeing is the parents are even sending their kids for local tournaments during the board exams. I mean, I won't say during the board exams, or even a week or two prior. So I mean, I can definitely see a huge shift in the attitude of parents.
Right. And this is something that I've noticed too, as I traveled to India several times a year to do tennis camps over the last few years. And when I was playing regularly, traveling and spending a lot of time, I think over the last 5-10 years, the sporting culture is developing.
Sure.
And, there's a lot more openness for even families that maybe wouldn't have taken sport as seriously before. There's more openness to having their kids play, and the understanding of the benefits. I do want to stress on playing sport for the right reasons, and you touched upon this earlier in your question on looking at results and the financial implications and so forth. And I would say that you want to try to change the perspective from that type of thinking to a much broader understanding of the benefits of sport.
Hmm.
Putting the career piece aside, I mean, it's well known that to be a professional tennis player, it's a very small percentage of athletes that get to that level.
Sure.
And there are many reasons that it's related to skill. It could be related, it's related to opportunity. Some people have the skill, but the opportunity is not there to take their skill to the professional level. It's highly competitive. There are very few spots. So we know that making a career in sport is the probability is small. Nevertheless, it's there. But putting that aside, I think understanding the real benefits of playing tennis, of being involved in tennis, and all the things we talked about, how it gets you into a positive, healthy environment. You make friends. You're playing a sport. You're getting physical exercise. You're developing your mental skills. It's helping you as a student. There's so many benefits. It's a lifelong sport. So I could go. There's a long list.
Sure.
But those are the reasons to play sport, and I feel so passionate now as a coach, because part of my role is to support people in this regard. It's making an impact through sport, and the impact is much bigger and broader than just developing champions. That will be there for the segment that really wants to play at Wimbledon and aspires to even win Wimbledon. Yes, the supporting them is important. But for the larger group, supporting a really good, positive, healthy experience in sport is transformational. It can impact their life in a very meaningful way.
Definitely, definitely. I completely agree with you. I have another question before we, talk about your transition. Were you always at the top at the AITA rankings, in the juniors under 12, 14? Were you always number one, number two, or did you also go through phases where you were out of the 100, top 100, and then you had to struggle and make it through to the ranks?
Yeah, as I think back, you know, uh, again in Mumbai and in Maharashtra, the quality of tennis was high. The standard of tennis was high, even in the under 10s. And
Right.
so, uh, I was training hard. I was putting in the time, playing, and so at the under 10, I was sort of at that top level, whether it's a top five or so. And I think several of those top three to top five were also in the top three to top five of India, or in the top 10 of India. So essentially, being one of the top players in my state was, a level where you were one of the top players in the country.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I remember going to my first international tournament representing India, and this was in under 14 in Hong Kong. And I was the number 3 player on the team. And in fact, I didn't get an opportunity to play singles, and maybe I got a few doubles in, or but I largely remember being the practice partner there, and supporting the team. And we qualified for the world group, and so it sort of, I had to work my way up.
Sure.
And then I won the national title in the under 14. I won the national title in under 16 and under 18. But then the competition was strong. And while I was winning tournaments, there were times where, I was going through patches where maybe I wasn't playing as well. And so that up and down is very much the journey of most players. And tennis teaches you how to go through that. And keep refining and learning and understand the value of preparation. Sometimes if your preparation is not there, other things came in, you understand your performance starts to suffer. And so it's a great learning experience.
Sure.
One of the things I would say is, and now that I've really sort of absorbed, and what I keep relaying to my players is, play the tournaments, again, the process focus, not so much on the result. It's okay, you won the match, you won the tournament, you lost the match, that's fine. It's going to be part of the journey. The key is, how did you play, what did you learn, and then how do we continue to adapt the training and improve the training? Because in the long term, that's what matters. Is the player moving forward on the journey? Are they improving? Are they getting ready for the next level ahead?
Sure.
And so I tend to focus less on results now, and much more on the plan and the path for the player, and keep trying to help them with that perspective.
Great. Great. So, how was it like in the ATP tour?
Yeah, it was a great experience. It's once in a lifetime experience. For me, it was always a dream. I think from maybe the age of 12, 13, I started to think about it. I started to maybe envision myself achieving it one day, and all my efforts from that age on were to try to get to the professional level.
Sure.
And I got my opportunity after my, in college. I came to America after junior tennis in India. And I think that was a wonderful transition for me. It kept me in a structured environment. It kept me motivated. It kept me playing against great opposition. And I had fantastic coaches here, great infrastructure, all the things that one needs to keep improving were here. And I think that we can talk a little bit more about it, but I think that at that time, and this is the early 2000s, late 1990s, I think there was a gap. Once you reach the top in India in juniors, after that there's a bit of a void. I found myself feeling a little lost. uh,
Sure.
where do I train, whom do I train with? Because a lot of my players that I grew up with, the top players were going to the US to college, and then the
Right.
the generation before too, many of them went to the, so you literally didn't have enough players to even train with, and then academies weren't set up, and all the tournaments were outside India. So there was a big void. And I think US college tennis gave me a clear pathway to keep improving and playing. And through that, through my accomplishments in the US, where I won the national title and then got into India's Davis Cup team, that opened up the opportunity for me to go after professional tennis. And overall, I'd say that my experience is a very positive one. Of course, you get to travel the world, do what you feel passionate about. I think I did well, getting to. My aspiration was always to get into the top 100 of the world in singles.
Sure.
I got close to about at that 200 level. And unfortunately, there were some challenges that came with a couple of injuries. But overall, I think it was an interesting journey, with the opportunity to play, and then the challenges around supporting the career, the type of support you need. I think one of the things I realized was, at the professional level, it's very difficult to do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what your talent or desire or ambition or drive, you can have all of those characteristics. But
Right.
the players who get to the top have that, and they have a high level of support. And what I mean by support is not just the funding to travel and play and the training, which is a very important piece, but they're able to put together a team.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the coaches and trainers, all the pieces that you need to continuously move forward and develop your talent, the long term support you need, because oftentimes it doesn't happen in a year or two. Even being the best player in college in the US, transitioning to the ATP Tour, to get to the level where you're playing grand slam singles, you're competing at the highest level consistently, it can take several years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes even more. And
Sure.
so you need you need a plan and a support system in place over that period of time
Right.
to and that I think largely I was lacking. So I think that was one area. If I had to do it again or think through it, I think would have thought through, and that's what I advise my players now who are thinking about professional tennis. Is talking to them about their plan, the support, giving them a perspective and idea on the length of time and the commitment that it's going to take, and the ability to be resilient, right, through that period is very important.
Sure. Sure. So I guess I did not get you there. You did not directly transition from the AITA to the ATP. I figured because a lot of athletes are doing that right now. They go from AITA to ATP for a year or so, and then they go to college if they want. So you went from AITA and you directly, took a scholarship and went to the US.
Yes, and I would say that is the typical pathway, to go from junior tennis to the US college tennis, which is a transition between if you have the aspiration to be a professional tennis player, then college tennis in the US is essentially a transition for many, many players from junior tennis to professional tennis. It's clearly a level or two higher than the junior tennis in India, because college tennis America attracts talent from all over the world. You're playing against the best, the best juniors from Europe, from all over. And if you're able to succeed at that level of competition, it's a good gauge as to your readiness for the professional tour. College tennis also gives you a couple of years to continue to train and develop physically, mentally, to take on that next step. And I'd say in every player's situation is unique, but in my case, the opportunity to play professional tennis right after juniors from India wasn't there.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I didn't have the sponsorships, I didn't have the training base, I didn't have I didn't have the ability, even being India's number 1 junior, which I was. I did not have the opportunity to play professional tennis. Just couldn't make that happen. It would have, if I had stayed in India, I think the best I could have done was maybe continued some level of training, played a few tournaments, but I would have had to really struggle to get those types of sponsorships and the support to try to travel and get abroad and play the tournaments. So it just wasn't a viable opportunity. And I think for most of the players that I played with, that was the case. Now, for the players who came from families where they could support them financially to do that, uh, that's different. And now I know things have changed. Maybe in the last 10-15 years, the business of sport has really taken off in India. The sponsorships, whether from government entities or private sources, corporate India, those have grown. There are, it's much more professional in terms of the marketing, the support that athletes are getting. And so now, it's possible that you can make a transition from junior tennis to professional tennis and have that opportunity to travel the world, have a coach, have a training program. But that really didn't exist when I was growing up.
Sure, sure. I would like to say, even now, you need to be extremely lucky. Obviously, you have to be at the top, and even then, you need to be really, really lucky to, get these sponsorships, because it still hasn't reached, the US or even the, you can say, China level, where we were playing ITF juniors, and players, athletes in the qualifying were being sponsored by, Yonex and a lot of these brands. So yeah, India still has a long way to go with regards to this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To provide one point of comparison, the USTA has a dedicated player development department.
Hmm.
And this department, I could be a little bit off, but there are, I think, over 50 or, around, or maybe more full-time professionals working in that department
Wow.
with the sole focus of developing their top talent. And that includes having the infrastructure in place, the training centers across the country where those players can train. They can go there, they can train, they have access to the best facilities. In Florida, they have a tremendous complex. There are over, I think, 80 courts, maybe 100 courts, but all the surfaces, clay, red clay, hard, grass, you name it, indoors. There are coaches there that you can, so the resources that are available for the top talent, you're talking about sports science, that's there. So, there's a tremendous amount of support that goes into developing the top talent. And then you get, athletes performing at the highest level of the world. And that's the system, right? We're not talking about one athlete coming out or two athletes. We're talking about a system where a number of players are playing in the top 100. A number of players, are performing. There's a pipeline, and that comes from that level of effort. That, again, as I think back to my time, wasn't there in India. It was largely a personal effort,
Sure.
largely the drive of the athlete, the support that their family could put together for them,
Yeah.
and the goodwill of people around who could help.
Right.
So within that system, I think for us to come out of that type of environment with that opportunity and do the things we've done at the international scale, playing grand slams, getting close to the top 100 in the world in tennis, the things that Indian tennis players are doing is phenomenal. And I just want to make that point because a lot of people don't understand that. They come from countries where there is tremendous opportunity and support. And opportunity is a big word. I really believe in opportunity in life. If people have opportunity, they will do great things. But
Definitely.
in tennis, there was the opportunity, but when you're talking about playing at Wimbledon or even winning Wimbledon, that's a different set of opportunities. And largely, I think that hasn't been there. And there are reasons. I think a lot of sport away from cricket, there's been a lot of underinvestment. If you
Sure.
think of the level of investment in sport, uh, whether it's the facilities, you think about the sponsorship for the athletes, the surrounding them with the right type of people with the expertise to help them. uh, that takes a lot of investment, and I think that we've underinvested in sport. And but now, looking at the situation now and looking ahead, I think that's changing, and I'm glad to see that. And I think it will result in sport taking off, and already we are seeing that, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing Indian athletes performing at the highest level in so many sports, and that's a result of the level of support and opportunity increasing now.
Definitely. Yeah. Right. That's a really wonderful point. Any Indian athlete making it to the top, it's incredible, because just being tennis players, we know the whole system and how everything's done. I don't want to mention any association or anything, but we know how it's done, right? So it's it's a great effort from the individual athletes.
Yeah. I think back to a match, a tournament that I played, and I played Andy Murray when he was coming on the tour. And I think back to that and I reflect, I was one of the top players from India.
Sure.
And Andy was clearly one of the top players coming out of the UK.
Hmm.
And even at an early age, Andy was at that tournament with a coach. He had the infrastructure and support of the LTA behind him. If I think of his mindset, right, I think the mindset was, how do I maximize my potential and win Wimbledon,
Sure.
right? He's thinking at that level. The people around him are thinking at that level. How do we get him the right coaches? When he first came on, there was talk about the fitness aspect, and they addressed it. He had the trainers, and again, I don't know all the details, but I'm sure that the training systems, the programs, the centers, they were there,
Right.
right? Those opportunities were there. And of course, not to belittle, but I'm sure they went through challenges, and every athlete goes through that. And it's a tough journey no matter where you come from. But
Yeah.
the point of comparison I wanted to make is, being the top player from India, I was still thinking, can I just survive on the tour?
Right.
I didn't have a consistent coach or a trainer. My thought was, gosh, I got to stay here. I've got to try to do well so that I can still be viable on the tour, right? And so you see the difference. You've got a situation where you've got athletes thinking not just about surviving, but actually thinking about training and moving themselves forward. Whereas I think a lot of our players are just trying to keep themselves going, and that's unfortunate. But again, it is what it is, and I think those things are changing now, and I'm glad to see that.
Sure, definitely. And when you mention that at the highest level, it's 1 or 2 points, right? It's one step, winning that deuce point, winning that advantage point, and just having every resource possible, your your psychologist, your musher with you, your physio with you, just them tweaking that. If you have a niggle in your shoulder or whatever, just getting that fixed before the match, that makes that 0.001% difference that ends up in their favor. They end up winning the match because of that.
Yes, I mean, from a performance standpoint, where you often see the players are playing, they look over, the support that they have is a big part of it, and they all, after the matches, you always see them talking about their teams and acknowledging the dedication and the support that they receive. But another point is that through this journey of professional tennis, this long sort of multi-year journey, there are lots of ups and downs, and uh, even in terms of keeping your motivation, continuing to believe in yourself, continuing to feel that yes, you have the opportunity. This is important because when you face adversity, it's the people around you, it's the support system. Those things keep you grounded and keep you focused and keep you going. And oftentimes, you need to be resilient through that. So, I talked about resiliency, and these are also things that impact an athlete's mind,
Yeah.
and can be the difference between somebody who maybe lets that dream go and moves on to something else, versus somebody who is able to sort of move through that and continue to go after that endeavor. So yeah, it's interesting, and I admire people who show great resiliency, and many of them I played with and who are still out there right now performing really well. I admire the qualities
Hmm.
and the dedication and all of the things that they possess and have developed to be so resilient and persistent and continue to strive, through all of the opportunities and challenges that they face. I think this is a key characteristic. If you're talking professional tennis and talking about playing at the highest level,
Sure.
From a mindset standpoint, you got to be able to be extremely resilient. And I know that Nadal's coach talks about it. I read an interview recently, and that's a characteristic they focus a lot on. And
Right.
I think they attribute a lot of Nadal's success to the resiliency that he has,
Right.
and so many challenges that he's overcome, particularly on the injury front,
Right.
to keep going through that and coming back and playing at the highest level.
Definitely. Definitely. So, Harsh, would you recommend an athlete go for a US college tennis, or would you prefer them, going to a school in Europe?
Um, I think each one's situation has to be understood,
Right.
right? There's no one size fits all, but I think largely the benefits of US college tennis are that you have access to world class facilities
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the courts, the gyms. You're also surrounded by experts in the field, your
Right.
coaches, the trainers, the support science piece of it. So, and then the competition, it's at a high level, and all of it is extremely well organized. So, you're not there trying to, spend your time buying tickets and managing your schedule and doing all of that. It's taken care for you. So when you come to a US college, your focus is on doing your part as a player, which is putting in the work on the court, continuing to develop yourself as a player and as a person. You also get the opportunity to play on a team, and this is wonderful to be with other people, having that team experience, developing the skills to be a team player, which you often don't get in sort of the individual environment of tennis in juniors. In addition to that, you also have the opportunity to get a very good education.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's world, that's a bonus. I mean, if you can be well rounded,
Right.
that's only going to help you. So there are so many benefits of continuing to play tennis at a high level, continuing your education, particularly in your late teenage years or early 20s, and keep preparing yourself for a professional tennis if that is your desire. A lot of people transition to other things, and that's fine. But if the desire is you want to play professional tennis, I think that window very much exists. And nowadays players are playing well into their 30s. So if
Right.
you think of a tennis career, maybe 15, 20 years ago, people were retiring at 30, early 30s. Now you see even Federer and Djokovic and Nadal, they're all in their, mid 30s, late 30s, and they're playing the best tennis that they've had. So clearly that the career is much longer. And so 3-4 years of your life between 18 and 22 can be very well spent at a tennis school or at a university, and continuing to pursue your tennis as well as academics. Now if you have the level of support, and there's an athlete who's already at a world class level, if you're talking about a Grand Slam, junior Grand Slam player who's performing at the highest level, and clearly they're ready for professional tennis and they have the support. For them, it may make sense to go directly on the tour and get there early at the age of 18, get the experience, and that's fine too. So it really depends on where you are in your journey, and surrounding yourself with the right people, reaching out to the right people, people you trust, people who have the competence to maybe guide you, can be important in thinking through that decision.
Sure. Sure. So, okay, college tennis done, ATP tour done. You transition to coaching.
Right, yeah. And the transition from professional tennis to the next career is an interesting one, and can be quite challenging, as I found out. And it could take many years for people to actually find their path forward. It's interesting. Most people are getting started in their careers at 30, 31. I retired from tennis at 30. So essentially ended one career. And so you're still very young and trying to figure out, what next to do. I always felt coaching is something I could do. I had started coaching a little bit those last few years, and my parents were coaches, and so I grew up around coaches, and I felt that would be a good fit for me.
Mhm.
But that transition, I took some years. I got into coaching. I led a program, uh, then went to business school for 2 years. Got some corporate experience. So that was wonderful. I saw a different part of the world, and it was a good experience for me because I learned a lot. And then I really found my passion and calling back to tennis. And so, have been back into tennis and trying to help develop players. And I think one of the things that inspires me is the benefits of sport
Right.
and making an impact in people's lives through sport. I can't think of a better way to serve people, and to, when I see the joy in the face of kids playing, and just, it's a wonderful feeling. And I think sport is a wonderful way to make an impact. Um, and and also, I think from a professional standpoint, as a player, I think that even though I got to a high level, uh, as I look back, I feel there was a lot more in me. Could have gone a lot further,
Mhm.
and so I think that motivates me to support players now who have the same aspirations that I did. And now I have the opportunity to share with them what I learned, the good decisions I made, the mistakes I made. I can help them navigate this journey. And even the parents. Professional tennis is a complex journey. It's not well understood, and I feel that I'm uniquely positioned to help people think through it and understand all that goes into it, and then to help the players really maximize and go as far as they can go. So that's the endeavor, is to promote the sport, get a lot of players playing and enjoying it, and then parallel to that, supporting players who want to go to the higher levels, and helping them get there.
Great, great. So, how do you still have that competitive feeling when you're coaching? Because I asked this because when I obviously didn't reach the level you reached, but even when I got done with my tennis career and I started taking a few privates, private coaching and all that, I still had that feeling of wanting to compete instead of just teaching. So did you have a similar experience?
Maybe initially, of course, you let go of, when I stopped playing on the tour. I There were reasons why I stopped and had to transition. And I did feel that it's difficult. It wasn't. I still felt I had more in me.
Mhm.
Clearly, I could play a little bit, couple more years. But again, no regrets. I think I gave it a good run too. So maybe that initially, yeah, it's a little difficult, but then I haven't struggled with that piece. I understand that now in coaching, it's not about me.
Right.
It's about the player. It's about others, and my role is to serve others, to help others. So it's not about me competing, or I don't miss that. In fact, I enjoy helping others. And I also try to put my ego aside as a coach. I'm not here to prove anything. And if my players play well, I say, they take the credit. The credit is to them. I'm there. I will still ask them what they did well, what did they learn, what do we need to work on. And
Yeah.
if they lost, that's still the focus.
Mhm.
And so I try to put my, so yeah, I don't feel that I need to be overly competitive. In fact, the attitude that I have, which is more process focused, um, I enjoy the experience. I think that's a wonderful, healthy attitude to have, and it comes from this understanding that it's a journey. It's a long process, and that one needs to be balanced through it, and also the acceptance that there are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, and we just have to move forward. Yeah, I enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy watching my players play, and just keeping them motivated and happy. And just recently, one of my players this past weekend played a tournament, and it's fun to watch them and then have those discussions. I've been in their shoes. I know how they feel. So
Mm.
that's maybe one advantage of having been a player,
Right.
that I can understand the players' emotions and feelings, and be able to talk to them at that level.
That's great. That's great to know. And tell, what's Tennis City?
Tenacity is my tennis program,
Mm-hmm.
and we have group lessons for kids as young as for grades 1 through 12. So I've partnered with a school here, and we offer spring, summer, and fall programs for beginning level and intermediate level kids. And the idea here is to get them introduced to the game, get them enjoying the game, learning the game, the right fundamentals, and providing a platform for them to play at higher levels if that's the desire, or to just give them a good experience in the game, and that'll translate to many good things in their life. I mean, they'll keep playing tennis and enjoy the sport. And so it's really about promoting the sport, supporting the sport. And then parallel to that, we have a high performance group,
Mm-hmm.
and these are players that are junior players that are looking to play for their high school teams. They may have an aspiration to play college tennis. Some are aiming to play even further, and I try to support them with high quality training and guidance in terms of helping them along their journey. So lots of coaching here in Minnesota, group coaching for the kids. I work with a few adults as well, and I enjoy working with adults as well, because people of all ages and skill levels. Tennis is a source of joy, and it's great to support players who enjoy the game and want to stay active and keep improving. I'd say the adult piece of it is a smaller piece. The major focus is junior tennis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in Minnesota, and then I've done camps in India, where last year before the pandemic, I have visited places like Chandigarh, tied up with academies there, and conducted weekly camps to support the players there, and give provide them with an international level of coaching, and just guidance. A lot of times parents have questions on their sort of the next steps, the journey. So just providing guidance, and trying to develop players and support them in India as well. I've made a trip to Sri Lanka as well. So continuing to give back, and try in my best capacity to help and support players both in the US and India, and in fact anywhere in the world. Nowadays with technology,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot we can do by just watching video and providing guidance.
Sure. Sure. So what's unique about Tennis City? Like, what do you do to help your players?
You know, what's unique about it is the passion and sincerity with which I approach what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, versus just doing it as a career. So how does that translates to the personal interaction that I have with each player.
Right.
I personally know them. I'm working with them on the court. There is that personal connection. I'm thinking about their goals. What are they looking for, and creating that environment in training and in matches to support their goals. So that personal involvement, of course, the background and expertise that I have developed through dedicating my life to tennis. That is a uniqueness about what I'm doing. And then I think bringing that perspective that sport is not just about winning.
Right.
It's not just about accomplishments. There is much more to this. It's if and so trying to spread that message that the value is in playing. your involvement in the sport, your being in a healthy environment, an environment that understands, uh, you know uh, that is supporting their play. So I talk about creating a supportive environment that also is fun and where everyone feels part of it. So our players really feel part of a program that cares for them, and there's that connection. And I think that is what makes our program very unique
Mhm.
versus maybe a program that's just trying to grow and have n number of kids. And that it's much different than that. And I think we see that in the relationships that we have with all of the families that come and want to gain something from this sport.
Sure. So is this what you mean by supporting higher player development standards?
Yes, I think that is important. The way we approach the programs, the coaches that I'm training, I spend a lot of time with my assistants training them. They're not just sent on the court, and said, okay, now go to court, and then go to the court and now run a group. I spend time training them, developing them. For me, culture is important, and that starts with our team and them understanding our goals and our program's culture, the type of environment that we want to create. So there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes, and I'm proud to do that. And I feel that again, that's very important. That's a big part of my role, is developing young coaches and working with them, and then being very much involved from all the levels and ages on the court, and trying to both create a fun environment, but at the same time an environment that you can clearly see there's a plan, there's a structure, there's a focus on developing skills,
Yeah.
and the progressions. Sometimes that fun element is there, but the other piece is lost. And I feel strongly that both can coexist, and we work very hard to do that. And the feedback that we've got, and I think that people recognize that when they come to our lessons and programs, we are trying our best to improve the skills, and aiming for those higher standards of player development. Even if it's a beginner who's just starting, making sure that they are they're developing the point of contact. They're doing fundamental drills that are helping them to set the foundation for them to play higher, that those drills, those skills are not being overlooked.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you've got a player at 12, 13 years old who is so-called high performance, but they have fundamental flaws, or they haven't developed a solid point of contact. They cannot hit a backhand. All these
Mhm.
things you see.
Right.
And those are things that, if you get it right at the age of 6 and 7, that foundation is important. And so I've really enjoyed working with kids even at that age, because that's really, to me, where a lot of player development happens. It's those early years. And of course, by the time the player is 17, 18, you want to see a well developed player. And at that time, as they go into college and beyond, the coaching changes. It becomes a little bit more refined. You're looking for those additional opportunities to keep moving them forward.
Sure. Sure. So you had some tennis programs in Minnesota in the US, and then India as well. You had some summer camps.
Yeah, in India, I did. These are typically camps that could last 5 days, or maybe even a shorter clinic. But typically, I would say a week. So in Chandigarh, we partnered with Roots Tennis Academy,
Okay.
which has a couple of centers, and I did a camp. I think this time last year,
Right.
and I was there in India for a month. But I spent about a week in Chandigarh working with players from the academy, but also from around the region that came, and we'd have 2 sessions a day, intensive tennis training, and then we also had one session for the beginning, intermediate level kids. So trying to touch as many kids as we can and support their tennis, inspire them, keep moving them forward. And so that was really the plan. We also had Enerzal, which is a company in India that has a sports drink product. So their support to organize a clinic in Mumbai. We had over 100 kids at the clinic at Prac Tennis. So trying to bring together the support that we need to conduct camps and to be able to help the players and impact their journey.
Sure, sure. So, 1 week, 10 days, 5 days. What do you look to improve upon their game? Because obviously, 5 to 10 days, you can't really make a lot of changes. So, what do you really focus on during these sessions?
See, I think it's you make a valid point, but I think what this is an experience that can be a catalyst
Hmm.
to um, to keeping their motivation in the sport,
Sure,
to providing the motivation to keep going.
sure.
The relationship, the experiences we have. Like if I think back to my experiences as a junior, sometimes it's not the things that happened over years. It could be even a day, or it could be a conversation
Right.
that really inspired me. And so that's what I try to do, is when I'm on the court with them, just
Sure.
to be with them, to help them, to support them, to share what I can share. Again, depending on what I'm seeing, as a coach, you're always mindful of not just what you say, but how much you say. Because if you say too much, then that message also gets. So you're always trying to find that balance, right?
Right.
And that's different from player to player. But I'm there with them on the court for
Mhm.
those 5 6 hours, and
Right.
they can feel that. And through that time, whatever time I have with them, it could be a few hours, it could be 5 days, it could be longer, but
Sure.
whatever time I have, uh, trying to make an impact.
Okay.
And if it's one thing, it's one thing, but it's one thing that's moving them forward. And
Right.
the other thing I feel is, it's not just those 5 days.
Hmm.
uh, you know there is a relationship that started, and several players and parents have stayed in touch with me,
Hmm.
and I'm remotely helping them, or they know that I'm there, or so
Sure.
it's the value of that connection is not just that time that we're on the court, but it could be ongoing.
Definitely.
And that's what I try to do. And so you're right. In 5 days, or in 10 days, or even a month, sometimes even a year, you need more time to develop a player. But whatever I can do within the time that I have, I'm trying to do something positive in their life.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I can totally relate because I remember we were training in Sri Lanka. Like, we have these 2 week ITF tournaments, and then if you lose early, you get to stay back for a week. So there was a coach, I guess, he had coached or trained Yuki at some point in time, and he said something that was around 9 years back, and I still remember it till date. So it's just
Right.
these one or two words, one, two sentences, that one piece of advice anyone can, you can give, and that may stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. The motivation, or just saying a kind word, and again, genuine, sincerely, but motivating a player, just continuing to let them know that they should keep going. That's a big thing, right? Particularly in India. I grew up there. You mentioned it. That's what we go through at every stage. There's that opportunity of moving away from it because of the pressures, or people around you are saying things, maybe going to school, maybe going to that. And so I'm very aware of that. So even if I can just be be able to play a role in helping them believe in themselves, right? That is something that I think is a win for everyone.
That
And we I remember back to the camp last year, we also had, there's always opportunities for leadership training too, right? I mean, when you're in tennis, you're in a group setting. There are times when you're playing a player who's better than you. There's a time when you're playing in a group where you're the best player. And so even simple things like that, but trying to talk to players about that, and motivating others. And it's okay if you're the best player on the court, but motivate others, keep trying your best, focus on yourself, and then try to help those around you. That type of message, I think, is very powerful too. And if we can make that impact, we're like I said, we're we're doing our job, and that's the objective.
For sure, for sure. So, the camps in the US and then in India, do you see some great talent in India coming up, in the grassroots level as compared to the US?
Yeah, so to clarify, my coaching in the US is year round. So
Sure.
there, now as we go into the winters, I have groups and I'm working with players. Throughout the year, I have a player who's actively, who's in college and aiming to play professionally, and but I think a majority of my players right now here in Minnesota are junior players who are aiming to play for their high school tennis at a level. So I work with them all year.
Mhm.
Um, to answer your question on um, talent, right? Whether the level of talent that I've seen in India, is that right? Did I
Yes,
get that
as
right?
compared to the US at the grassroots level.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I think what I was very impressed, or is the situation in India, and I'll make some comparisons, but here, for example, at the grassroots level, so if you're talking about beginners or you're talking about school level,
Mhm.
um, one of the interesting things, and this is again a Minnesota experience, it could be different, and I think it is different in maybe in California or Texas or Florida, different parts of the U.S. It's a big country, and based on weather and culture, it's quite different. But in Minnesota, what's interesting is the kids are encouraged, and this is probably true all over the U.S., but they're encouraged to play in a lot of sports. So specialization is not so much of the focus, but it's quite often they're playing tennis in the warmer months. They may be playing basketball or hockey, in the winter, and that's encouraged. So multiple sports, multiple activities. A lot of times my students are playing tennis, and they're also in music and other things, extracurricular activities. So I think a lot of kids, this well-rounded focus, a lot of experiences, that is definitely evident here. And what that means is that the time commitment for tennis has to be accordingly adjusted. So
Right.
here I would say, if a player is playing 3 times a week, that's probably high commitment,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
Whereas in India, what I saw in the academies and programs that I visited, and what is my experience growing up, was a lot of players are, they're going to school, but then they are playing tennis, so they're tennis players,
Right.
and I'm not sure that they're doing other sports. They're playing in India. I would say a high commitment would be 5 to 6 times a week, right? It's not unusual to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
lots of players who are playing maybe even every day, maybe taking a day off in a week. And that's what I saw.
yeah.
In Chandigarh, lots of players are really dedicated and committed to tennis. And in fact, even at a young age, the parents are, talking about professional tennis and really going after that dream. So I think that is not the majority here. There may be a few, but I think largely here they're playing as an experience. They understand the value of the sport, and majority are potentially aiming to play, like I said, for their school.
Right.
So that's interesting, that in one way, I think the kids in India that I saw are putting in a lot of time. They're dedicated. Their families are there to support them as best they can. But
Okay.
one of the things that I think is lacking, or at least what I felt there is a need for, is a high level of coaching expertise, someone to guide them,
Right.
and to really help them along the journey. So that is clearly maybe an area that becomes a big challenge to overcome.
Sure. Sure.
Uh,
So,
uh, and then
what?
as far as the talent, I was very I mean, high potential, as I see. um, there's a book called Peak, written by Anders Ericsson, and I believe in that philosophy. But what Anders Ericsson talks about in the book is, and through the research that he's done in sport and in many fields, he redefines in a way what is high potential and what is talent. And it's not, in his words, and what I believe, it's not what we think of normally. A talented player is somebody who's gifted or has some gift, but
uh,
it's really a player who's showing a lot of passion for the game, someone who is, who loves to be on the court,
Right.
and is willing to put in the time, because no matter what your, initial ability to take up the sport or your natural playing style, you'll have to put a lot of time in
Yeah.
to get to a high level. And it's the kids who have that intrinsic joy who are the ones who are more likely going to really go through it. So I saw a lot of kids like that in India. I saw a lot of them really enjoying their time on the court. If I said, we're going to start at 6 a.m., they'd all be there.
Mhm.
So they're ready, and they were there every day. We were training 2 sessions, and even on the fifth day, there was no tiredness. There was a willingness to do whatever it takes.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's high potential, and that's what I have seen, even again growing up there. And that's the point I make, that we have never lacked um, high potential players.
Yeah.
That has been in abundance, and we haven't developed them, and we haven't provided the opportunity for them to really go as far as their potential would take them. And I feel passionate about this, and as much as I can, I'm going to do whatever I can to support now and into the future, right? Because it's there, and in one way, it's a bit unfortunate that a lot of it has, the talent and the potential has been lost.
Sure. Sure. So, one piece of advice for parents of tennis players.
Yeah. So let's maybe break it up into two sort of groups, right? One is the group of parents that want to introduce their kids to the sport, and want their kids to play, enjoy the sport, gain from all of the benefits of tennis that we've talked about in this interview. And I think just continuing to encourage them to get involved in tennis, to keep it fun, to just enjoy the sport and the experience, and find programs that are dedicated to teaching the game in a structured way. You can see, because I think sometimes kids end up, if they're not developed well, appropriately with the right skills. Tennis is a high skill sport, so it can be, it can, you've got to get those progressions right at the beginner level. And this is something that I've been learning, and I continue to learn from experience, and from courses, and from the resources that are out there. But at the beginning level and early levels, to understand how to train and make it skill appropriate, to have those progressions properly timed, those can all impact the experience of a player and whether they will stay in the sport. And sometimes if it becomes too hard or too challenging, or the environment is not right, that can lead to them getting away from the sport, maybe going to something else. So it's important to select the right program, and to do the best there that you can, and continue to understand the bigger, broader benefits of the sport, and keep encouraging your children to play. So that would be for the group that wants to play tennis, and enjoy the sport. And then for the group that is looking to develop their children and maybe have aspirations of high level, national level play, or even international level play. Maybe they want to aim for a Division 1 college scholarship in the US.
Mhm.
There, I really believe in building a relationship with the coach and the coaching team, right? To committing, finding a coach that you feel is the right fit. I think that's an important decision.
Mhm.
Whom you select to help develop your child, and then building a relationship with them, not just going there and playing a little bit, then going somewhere else and somewhere else, and you have bits and pieces, and the relationship's more transactional in my view. But as a coach now, I really look for players who understand the value, and are there to develop a relationship and work along a plan, and are committed. They understand it's going to take time, but they're committed, and they see the value in that relationship. And I think that's important, to try to become a player.
Mhm.
And if you look at, again, I'll mention Nadal, but he's a good example of a player who had a team from a young age, stayed with them, stayed committed, and you can see the results, right?
Right.
So I'd encourage those parents to get settled in a program, in a system, and to work with that. And I think in the long term, that's going to be much more beneficial than just sort of trying to navigate all this by yourself and making decisions. And even incorporating the coach's view in decisions like which tournaments to play, scheduling. So
Right.
these are important, and the coach is there to provide their expertise.
Definitely. Definitely. Um, Harsh, I have taken too much of your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the value you've given today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and thanks for the opportunity to come on your podcast. And it was great talking to you. And I hope the viewers enjoyed it, and hope that I've been able to share some value, and that can help people in their journey. So thanks a lot.
Yes, of course you have. So a lot of people would definitely want to get in touch with you. They definitely would want to know more about Tennis City. So where can they find you? Where can they find out more about Tennis City?
Yeah, sure. So the website is a great spot to learn more about our tennis program.
Okay.
It's tenniscity.com, TENICITY.com. So there I regularly update the program offerings, and I have blogs as well. I've been sharing the success stories of the players that train with me,
Hmm.
and then blogs on other aspects as well, including one on the process where I've written an article on immersing yourself in the journey, letting the results unfold. So you'll find a lot of valuable resources on the website. Um, in addition to that, Facebook, Tennis City's Facebook page, we have updates there. I post some videos, and so that's a nice spot. LinkedIn as well, Tennis City's LinkedIn page. And then if you're looking for some instructional content, I have quite a bit on Tennessee's YouTube channel. Lots of drills that you could even, during the pandemic, early part of this year, lots of videos on swings and exercises you can do at home, and then several other videos and resources for stroke development and so forth. So those are ways that people can learn more about me and the program, and I look forward to connecting with those who we can support.
Perfect, perfect. I'll have all the links on the show notes. So, um, guys, please do check out Harsh's incredible program. And yes, thank you, Harsh. Really appreciate it again. And hopefully, we could you could come back for some more topics.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to our next chat.
Yeah, cheers.